So Dr. Newman is a psychoanalyst, psychologist, author, and public speaker, has practiced in New York for over 25 years, treating adults, adolescents, and families struggling with anxiety, depression, workplace concerns, and more recently, COVID-19 stress. Her new novel, Barbarians at the PTA, explores bullying and quickly became an Amazon bestseller in multiple categories. Set in a wealthy New York suburb, the novel features cyberbullying, anxiety, eating disorders, and parenting as a contact sport. Think Desperate Housewives meets Mean Girls. All right, Dr. Newman, you can take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm delighted to speak about adolescence and screen time, and I will touch upon some what's going on currently with schools and adolescents or teenagers during the pandemic, being online school. I'll also tell you a little bit about how it's different now. The American Academy of Pediatrics has had certain recommendations, which cannot, of course, they had to go out the window for now. And I'd just like to talk with everybody about some recent social media controversies to give you an idea of the profound reach of social media, the influence of it. It has an impact on the election movements form. I don't think people realize. I'm speaking also generally about younger kids, also pre-adolescents and teenagers too. So when I say social media, sometimes people think it's a frivolous thing, like, oh, I'll take a selfie. I wanted to touch on some serious topics too. Then I'll take some questions, and then read a few pages from my book, which deals with all these issues, called Barbarians of the PTA, and then also talk about that. So let me begin. I have a few notes because I wanted to touch on a lot of things, and I wanted to be able to be organized. Okay, so 7 months ago, the old days, right, when dinosaurs walked the earth, the American Academy of Pediatrics said your kids should be on screens no more than 2 hours a day. Well, fast forward, homeschool, online school, virtual, everything virtual. We're virtual. So that clearly can't be happening. So what they've come out and said is, if they're online 8 hours a day, okay, but at least give them something creative. Also encourage them to do physical activities, encourage them to be off a screen, not just play screen games. And really, why does it matter? If kids are on a screen from the minute their eyes open, we're on screens. Everybody that has an iPhone, another kind of phone, we're on screens all the time. Why does it matter? Well, studies have shown that you do have an increased incidence of depression and anxiety for young people who are always on screens. There's even a new guideline for what they're calling addiction, screen addiction dependence. And that's very extreme. It's rare, but it's an issue for people. So why it matters is because teenagers and younger people, kids, are particularly vulnerable to different types of bullying when not only the mental struggles that I talked about, depression, anxiety, but particular forms of social media use and abuse, which is what I wanted to talk about today. The Center for Disease Control has spoken about bullying, and now they call it an adverse childhood experience. What that gobbledygook means is they've classified it in a way that now they're actually seeking to identify it, deal with it in families and schools, allowing people, once it's named and labeled, to do something about it, and then replace some of the bad experiences, the negative, the trauma that's caused, because that does lead to different kinds of, it can lead to depression, anxiety, it can lead to substance abuse, any kind of early trauma can lead to behaviors that are dangerous for kids, cutting, depression, anxiety, substance. So it disrupts, it's known to disrupt neural development and other things that you just don't want. It's at the root of different psychiatric problems. So in one study, those who were bullied were found to be 4 times more likely to develop depression than those who weren't. In childhood, I mean. Okay, bullying is important. It's an issue. Screens are an issue. That's by way of background. It leaves kids vulnerable to predators. Those who have kids here, grandchildren, those who themselves are playing certain games online, there are open chats where you could have a very cute little 12-year-old playing Fortnite and random people can have a chat with your child. So there's parental controls. It's just good to know about that. They are possibly can be picked on by predators. Also, it's important, I would say, as a psychologist, I'm wearing two hats here, psychologist and author, and it's important to set limits, not to let people sleep with a laptop in their room, with a desktop in their room, take their phone away. They should not be receiving a text at 2 a.m. at any age.
I
Because
think you,
once people wake up at 2 a.m., kids, they don't go back to sleep. So they don't need incoming texts. That's what I would say as a psychologist, as who advises parents as a parent. There should just not be blanket access to screens. That's one thing. So let me just tell you a little bit about the dangers of too much screen time. People have heard of sexting. That's when you snap a photo and then you send it. Maybe you're a 14-year-old girl and a cute boy asks you for a photo, and you snap a photo in a compromising position. Well, that can be forwarded. And that happened in Massachusetts not so long ago. And then this young 14-year-old who had sent a picture of herself topless, the photo was forwarded throughout so many schools near her that she ended up committing suicide. And it was a real tragedy. And the parents sued the school district, saying, you set this up because of this. And what was found was that because this didn't occur online, all the forwarding and all the kids who made comments about her and called her terrible names, I'm sorry, not online, it didn't happen in person. And because of that, the school was not found to have jurisdiction to expel the students or things like that. So that's one type of issue that can come up with screens: sexting, bullying. There's also other kinds of misuse. Some of this will be reviewed, but I thought I would just tell people, everyone knows what these social sites are. You'll hear the names, you'll nod, they're in the news all the time, but I thought I would just be a little more specific about them. So things like the misuse and the reach, the incredible reach of social media. Things like Facebook. Somebody made a page, a young kid made a page, and I'll disguise the name, but it basically said, Johnny is not a human being. Johnny should kill himself. And the problem is that Facebook page then got 1,000 likes. So 1,000 people, and Johnny could see this, liked an incredibly cruel and disparaging comment about Johnny. Well, you can imagine how devastating that was to his mental health. And it's not just kids who are bullied online. Anyone who ever has gone on Twitter, it's brutal. When the pandemic began, there was a social media blackout for Black Lives Matter and other social causes. So a very famous company that you've all heard of and you all have their products, a luxury goods company, launched a purse. And I don't want to pick on them, but they were ripped to shreds. Because why, during a Black Lives Matter social media blackout, are you talking about a purse? So they took a hit. So that's the kind of thing that I find to be very, very interesting about social media. Instagram is a photo sharing app. Probably, I know Harmony Club's on it. I know that, so maybe all of you are on it. If you have kids and grandkids, they are always posting photos. That's the selfie. That's the, maybe they're doing Snapchat with the selfie, which is a form of communication. But Instagram is hugely popular. And so when you're on a vacation and somebody has to get the right photo, they're generally posting it on Instagram. That's why they want to do it, to show how great things are. Of course, it's a false image, and this also causes a whole other host, fear of missing out, of problems, a lot of reactions on the part of people who aren't, it's not the truth. No one's posting necessarily, wow, I have a lot of homework. I'm getting bad grades. I have no friends. What they're more likely to post is, here's a picture of me with duck lips, and here's my new, designer thing. And they all make each other feel terrible by using social media like that. So. Not just was there a recent problem on Instagram, which I explained to you, but I thought it was so interesting, and I know we have at least one person who's very involved in the publishing industry, but there are so many things that go on. Social media gives everyone a platform, so anybody could say anything, and now their voices rise and they get followers and they're taken seriously. So a young woman wrote a book, a YA novel, and it was doing really well. And then a 16-year-old in wherever said, I don't like the use of the phrase almond eyes. This person's racist. And a bunch of teenagers whipped the internet into a frenzy, and the publisher had to pull this book. Again, this is a new phenomenon because everybody has a voice now, and that's good. We have a First Amendment, but also everybody has a platform, and it's been an issue in publishing, I think, for sure. I'm happy to take questions. I just wanted to get through a few of the social media things, and yes, if you want to post them in the question box, please do. Two more controversies that came up that I thought would be really interesting to discuss when I talk about misuse of social media and why screens matter, and especially during the pandemic. You've heard of Kellyanne Conway. She has a daughter, Claudia, who's 15. Claudia is on another big app, huge, TikTok. And that's been in the news because they're talking about should China own it. I'm not here to express opinions on any of these things, but I'm just here to mention that how the reach, the influence, and the power of some of these social sites. So Claudia posted something, she's 15, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it's been in the news. She posted something about her mom running around the house coughing, and her mom has COVID, and her mother hadn't yet announced it. And so what happened was people went wild. Like, why does this important person who's close to politicians and who's out there, why is she out there with COVID? And then there are it's been reported, and she put on her TikTok account her mother speaking to her in the background saying, I was tested and it was negative. Now take this down. So it's a very big deal. Everybody is talking about, should 15-year-olds be censored by their parents? Should they be allowed to make these kind of comments? And I would like to know what people think. But this is, again, somebody that's been in the high reaches of government. This is the profound impact that a 15-year-old can have. Her mother then had to come out and say that she was tested, and that's my understanding, that she hadn't announced it, and her daughter outed her. If I'm wrong, I want to hear, but that's what I read, and that's what I understood. I thought that was really a fascinating thing. They're influential, the sites, and it's not just teenagers that are involved, and there's a lot of different First Amendment type of issues, what I talked about in the publishing field, what I talked about in politics, what I talked about in business. A business got slammed for posting something. So we can discuss all of this. I'm willing to take questions.
So Chloe has asked, isn't it more about what is going on in that home? So is it more home focused or societal?
I love that question, Chloe. Thank you.
Chloe.
Yay. I would say that the first thing the school or a psychologist asks is what's going on in the home. There's no question. I'm not saying I think TikTok should be banned, I wanted to bring up a controversy that's currently going on that I thought would be really interesting to talk about, and it's all over the news. I'm not treating that family. It would be unethical for me to say anything, but it's just an example of a 15-year-old who wants to talk about stuff on social media, and then this has been going on for years, says things, and then the parents respond to it. And so their lives are played out in front of an audience in a way.
in fairness, my take on that one is there's a whole lot of stuff going on in that house. So I understand that, but in a way, like as parents, we just have to be aware that our children are on these platforms, and she's a public person, and maybe she is taking time off to deal with that. The issues, I think, for day-to-day people are more day-to-day related, and that's what. Sorry to just swerve this, but for instance, my kids haven't seen a friend since March.
Oh,
And I've noticed my young son has started really fighting and falling out with kids, and there's all that kind of thing. And then they get nasty on social media together, whatever. It's because there's no reality. They don't see each other. And I know if they just went to school, which he went to school for one day yesterday for the first time since before March, and it's going to change their lives. I think the social media thing is just so unrealistic. And it somehow they can fight, they can hate each other, they can pick on each other, they can do all these things. It's bringing these things in, and I don't really know how best to deal with that, particularly now with the pandemic,
are
when
you
we're so isolated.
are you saying that you would like, in a perfect world, for your son not to be on social media, but you know that that's a form of communicating and socializing? So
Well,
you,
it's more that I have boys, so they don't really care about Instagram, but they care about, and they don't take any selfies or any of that stuff because they don't care. But they do care about things like video games, and that's how they react with each other. Sorry, and then I will stop. They
no,
interact with each other, and I have noticed that my younger one, who's more passionate, has been having these huge dramatic fallouts with this one, and then this one's coming back and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but now we've fallen out with him," and it's just like this madness that's the only way they relate to each other. And it's almost like half relating, because if you were actually in the same room with somebody, you would not be fighting that way, that much, that whatever. It brings, as to your point, it brings out the absolute worst in people, and they can say things they would never say to your face.
yes, you're saying there's less accountability because some of it's anonymous, or sometimes there's a group of people, or they're not looking face to face. It brings out the worst in people.
Yeah.
It's tough because it is a game like Fortnite. I have a teenager. That's all a lot of boys want to do, and they do talk during these
Yeah,
games.
they do.
And at one point, we did discipline, and we took away the games for enough time that my son said, like, I don't even know what's going on with other people, and we gave him back after
That's
the
the
punishment.
problem.
But
Yeah.
it was shocking how they rely on these games. How even even kids who are in school, because this was right before the pandemic broke, but even kids who are in school or may play a sport or may have an after school activity are still socializing on these games.
Yeah.
Boys.
Yeah, they are. They really are.
I do hope that now that your son's back in school, it becomes more natural, because it's been a very unnatural world, and I'm sure they're feeling it. He may also be fighting with people because they're all not just isolated. Maybe they're stressed. Maybe they've had a lot of losses
Frustrated.
and disappointments,
Yeah.
whatever they are used to doing. You can't even plan a normal Thanksgiving. It's just all the
Oh,
things that were our routines that we would say, okay, well, this has been a really crappy week at school and work, but I can't wait to do the whatever that we always do for Thanksgiving, or what we always do Christmas week, and you know
we can't
everything.
even go apple picking.
Yes,
It's that bad. Yeah,
everything's disrupted.
I just think there's so much more accountability in human life. He went to school yesterday. He said it was chaotic, and it was amazing. Just amazing. Amazing to be around other kids. They were so happy. And I think maybe that's the gift of COVID in a way. But anyway, I do think that this online reality is just, people are saying things they shouldn't say. It's terrible.
No, it's dangerous for their mental health, and you have to find the balance between limiting it so that they're not online at 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
and also letting them have some access. It's not easy. And the other thing is, and I don't know if other people have experienced this, but just when for 82 seconds as a parent you're like, I sort of understand, a new thing comes out and they're all doing it, and it's like, what's that? Oh, I never heard of that. After they've had it for a month, they're really on top of. That's what TikTok was. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about TikTok wasn't to be political. It's more that when I first heard about it, and I saw kids making these.
No, you're right. You're totally right. I totally got your point on that. That particular family, I think there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot to unpack.
But what people associate with TikTok is singing and dancing videos, and you think this
Yeah.
is just insipid and stupid. And then all of a sudden it's a major issue. I forgot. I'm glad that you reminded me. Another major thing that happened with TikTok is a bunch of adolescents didn't want the current president to have a successful rally in the Midwest. Whatever you think of him, I'm really just saying this to explain about TikTok. So they all started a movement. They all talked with each other, and they bought out all the free rally tickets. And then what happened was they outsmarted the president. This was in Wisconsin, and not enough people showed up at his rally because all the people that were not supporters talked to each other and got the tickets on TikTok. The power of these sites is extraordinary, and teenagers know how to use them a lot better than we do. So I know this is a group of people that's really involved and really reads a lot and is really on the cutting edge and educated. And I thought that to talk about some of these cutting edge controversies would be of interest to people, because who would have thought that a bunch of kids on TikTok could ruin a presidential rally? Who would have thought that? I find things like that to be really shocking. And I'm happy to take more questions. I don't need to just talk on and on. So anybody, please, if you have other questions.
Have you read the Social Dilemma?
I've
not read. It's on Netflix. It's a film on it. So it was like kind of touching on the point that there could literally be upheaval and societal changes and movements all just through the algorithm. So like whether it's in control of Apple or the applications themselves, or even like Big Brother is watching, all of society and our livelihoods could be dictated on technology. And the population that is considerably the best with it is these generation XYZ. So
it's pretty scary. This is next on my list. I really do want to see it, but it's really scary what you're talking about. It is like Big Brother. And of course, there's so many things. I'm not an expert in technology, but I know a little bit about families and technology. I've lived through it and I've written about it. So I wanted to talk about that. But certainly people with all the face recognition, there's so many things that are really out of my purview, but it's scary. I think everybody knows everything about us. We were throwing out a box the other day and our name was on a label, and my husband said, like, we should pull the label off, and I did, but I'm thinking everybody knows everything anyway. Like, what's pulling a label off? It's like, the little girl who stuck her finger in the dike or whatever that story is, but there was a gushing of water. I mean, okay, we'll pull the label off. So I think your point about Big Brother is right. Scary.
It's so scary. And then the advertisements, and the kids are getting the ads too. So even if you could control like who they follow on Instagram, which isn't really realistic either, they're going to follow who they follow, and they're going to be followed by who wants to follow their account. And then whatever comes up as far as like the advertising or the algorithm is totally out of your control. So they could be sending ads for like, you know what I mean? Like surgery for 13-year-olds. Like,
that's true.
So that's one thing that resonates.
I don't know if anybody else has questions. I'm more than happy to take them. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I know we have a real a titan in the literary field, and I wanted to ask her what she thought about all these people that have a platform and start tweeting things, and then the publishers have to pull the books. I don't know, maybe she's had to step away. But I thought, if Karen's listening, doesn't that shock you? Like that these people can have so much power. Teenagers could say, hey, I don't like that the author wrote almond-shaped eyes, and then they get so whipped up that the publisher then has to pull a book. The 16-year-olds are calling the shots. I don't know.
Unmute. So I'm going to ask to unmute you.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. So I just asked to unmute.
Oh, you're very fancy. Okay. Well, unfortunately, publishers today succumb to a lot of the, pressures. For example, you remember Woody Allen's book? The employees at Hachette said, we don't want that book on our list. So the publisher, rather than saying, this is a free speech issue, you don't want to read the book, you don't have to, but it's important to hear this memoir of a prominent filmmaker. So a Sky Horse, where Stephanie has her book published, decided to take it on. They thought it was controversial. But it is unfortunate that publishers are very influenced by social media because they feel social media sells books. You and I we're having this beautiful event for you. Maybe the Harmony Club could put this on Instagram or something, it'd be, somehow. But if you think of the reach of the people, as you discussed today, in terms of social media, it's so vast in a positive and negative way, as you were saying. So unfortunately, that's the situation today. And there have to be some regulations, at least Facebook now, when Trump says something that's factually wrong, they're willing to take it down to some degree these days. So I think, I don't know about the other social media companies, but at least Facebook is being a little more responsible. But how, in this area of bullying, that would be something which is on the top of the list of taking down, because of the exact thing Stephanie's been speaking about, how deleterious the effects are in debasing someone, and the example you gave of the suicide. I mean, it's so, the reach is so vast, and the consequences are so profound.
I think Facebook also had to get taken to court before they instilled any type of regulation or policy, because they touched on that in the social dilemma, and they had to take them to the Supreme Court pretty much before they said, okay, fine, we'll filter out some of the false messaging, false advertising. And even that is still being reviewed, because who knows what Facebook wants to filter or not filter, because they have their biases too.
I know. I think that's my biggest concern, though. Like, who is this person who's making the decisions? Like,
right.
The tech world is so clearly slanted on one side, so they will correct Trump. But what are they doing on the other side?
Right.
And it's fine if you're not a Trump supporter, but I don't think it's fair. I think that's the problem with the news now. And that's why everybody's now going to the dark web to find their news, which is just echo chambers. Everybody's just hearing what they want to hear.
Do you want to say what the dark web is? Because some people might not know what that is.
Oh, I'm sure everybody knows. It's just, you find podcasts that typically, I don't know whether they all do, but they actually, CNN is just, I think it's the Real Housewives of New York. I just think it's just, they figured out with reality TV that if your hair is on fire, people will watch. And that's how they sell advertising. That's my take. So I think people have realized that it's too much drama all the time, all day, all night. And so they're finding other ways to get their news. Like, for instance, Megyn Kelly, I saw the other day, has started a new podcast. She's not even going to a network TV show anymore. There's so many of those. Now, she's not dark web, but there's a whole lot that have their own shows, and they have their own biases, and they admit to it. They're opinion-based. They're not saying they're the news and then really just being very biased. They're actually saying we're this, we're that. And then you pick and choose who you get your news from. So it's almost like impossible to get the news now unless you, like reporting news. Everything's opinion-based. You sort of have to filter through.
And everyone can have an opinion, like we were saying, from a
yeah, you need no education, no experience, just have an opinion. And if you say it, it's out there.
It's really amazing. That's true. The web is indelible.
A friend of mine has been working for years as a nutritionist, and somebody just decided to just say that she thinks that one of her products makes people sick. She's had to close her business down.
The F factor?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There's just so much going on there, but all you have to do is just say it. You, Stephanie, are a rapist. I've said it there. I think you're a rapist. I think. And it's out there. And then a lot of people, really? Are you? Are you sure?
Things go viral. At the tip of your finger, you could start a movement. You could start the trend with the hashtag.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's facts versus fiction. And, for that diet, like some people it works great. Other people it doesn't work great. But like to say that someone is poisoning someone with her products and then it goes viral and millions of people think that they're being poisoned by this diet that for other people, like they look great, they feel great. But now everyone's like, oh, that's poison. Yeah. Like,
there's a lot of power in the media, and then it's been it's more democratic now in a way, but also it's dangerous to have everybody being able to say whatever they want. And
Yeah.
I read about, do therapists ever fake their own Yelp reviews, was a question posed to the New York Times ethicist. And I thought that was such a funny question. This was a while ago. And what somebody wrote in and said, I'm a therapist, and I see that other people with less training and different specialties that aren't well trained are posting all these fake reviews. So I want to do it too because I have better training, and what I'm really doing is I'm going to be offering good treatment to people because I know I'm well trained and I know I'm a good therapist. And if I fake my reviews and they see a lot of stars, it's actually doing the public a public service. The ethicist found that argument to be, spurious, and the core of the argument was ridiculous.
Terrible.
But it's, it's what I certainly don't want to be like that Saturday Night Live skit Debbie Downer. I mean, the internet and social media, it's not all bad. It's fun. As Karen said, to be able to do an event like this and be on Zoom and, it is really fun, and I'm very privileged to be here. So I don't want to complain. I want to read to you a little bit from the book and talk to you also a little bit about it. I don't know if just before we move on, does anyone want to ask anything about teens and social media? And I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Morgan clicked back on. I don't know if you have a question or you're just.
I'm just here.
Hi. Okay, glad you're here. I don't mean to put anyone on.
Sorry, I've got a lot of workmen in my house, so that's why I keep turning it off.
And I want to thank Karen, for bringing me in and letting me be here. Karen is the absolute best at what she does, so I want to thank her for that. Okay, so this is the book, Barbarians at the PTA, and I'll read a few pages to you. And also, Lynn, you haven't said anything. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we'd love to hear from you if you want to speak. No? Is she on mute?
Yeah, I think she's on mute. But it looks like she's not, so I don't think it connected to audio because you actually are not muted. So I think that when you entered the room, it didn't connect to your audio because she's not actually on mute. If you want to type something in the chat, Lynn.
Yeah, please. We want to hear from you.
You could also type in the chat because I don't think it connected to your audio. But I see your mouth is moving. Oh. Zoom problems. Did anyone watch the pandemic special from South Park? Very silly, very out there.
It sounds fun.
It was fun, but really extreme. But good.
So, I don't know. If anyone wants to type into the chat box, I'm very receptive to questions. Now I'll read from this Barbarians at the PTA. Okay. So this is how it begins. The first chapter starts with best day. I've always told my therapy patients that endings are inevitable. It's best to understand feelings and move on without looking back. Having survived my share of losses and goodbyes, I knew that as soon as one door closed, another opened. These were heavy thoughts for a Tuesday at 8 a.m., but Rachel was starting a new elementary school. Transitions were on my mind. I headed down the hallway, wood floors creaking, causing my heart to do a little butterfly flip. It had only been a couple of weeks, and I still hadn't adjusted to all the sights, sounds, and scents. Our new house was full of them, and who knew what else? Well, what did I expect? The place was built before women had the right to vote. Rachel's room looked like a disaster relief site, with curtains and cast-off clothing at every turn. She sat on the bed, staring into her laptop, a photo of several girls at a back-to-school picnic. I glanced at her leggings and t-shirt. They were identical to those in the photo. My little Margaret Mead conducting field research on her first day of school. Come on, Rach, let's get moving. We got into the car and made our way over, taking the shortcut. It was muddy, littered with leaves and twigs. Driving to a nearby cul-de-sac and cutting through the back meant we didn't have to deal with the scene in the parking lot. I'd heard it took forever to get out of there, and I had to get to work. We were almost at the path to the entrance. Several girls who looked to be about Rachel's age pushed past. Why were fifth graders wearing makeup and pointy boots? And why was every car on the traffic line a giant SUV? My daughter was poker-faced, staring straight ahead and gripping her phone. I felt a stab of guilt. She'd been through so much without having to switch schools. Thinking of all the recent changes brought me back to a dark time only 6 months earlier. Once buried details resurfaced in my mind. Clear blue skies, the rectangular building at the edge of the floral district, a labyrinth of hallways leading to the justices' chambers. The three of us had stood, bodies knitted in a tight semicircle. Now I closed my eyes, hoping to will the sadness and anger away, but it was too late. Memories of that terrible scene at the altar flooded in. Despite the presence of scores of friends and relatives, their folding chairs running the length of the room, it was my great-aunt Pearl's voice I'd heard over and over that morning, her well wishes uttered over the phone from her bedside at the retirement community in Boca. "I hope you have the best day, dear girl." She was almost 94, too old to make the trip. Aunt Pearl's words and the image of doors closing had been etched in my brain, forming an unexpected pairing, sort of like Colin and me. I glanced at him, thrilled by his smile. Colin and I were getting married. My chest prickled with excitement at the thought that my daughter and I wouldn't be alone anymore. Instinctively, I reached over to squeeze her shoulders. At 10 years old, she was proud of her first salon blowout. Her brown hair and silky white dress was an identical match to my dark chignon and plain sheath. The basket of pearls captivated Rachel with every toss, every blood-red flutter. Her face split into a wide grin. Colin grabbed my hand. His chocolate-covered eyes stared straight into my soul. He was smart, handsome, and successful, a partner at his law firm. A bookish psychologist and single mom, I could hardly believe I'd met someone who cared for me and was good to my daughter. The justice was speaking about blending, how Colin, Rachel, and I were now one. I bathed in the warmth of her words, part of a family for the first time since my parents' fatal car accident my senior year of high school. I'd been mostly alone after that until Rachel came along. Glancing over the sea of dark suits and deep green, navy, and red dresses, I took it all in. The beautiful ceremony, my daughter and I surrounded by love. Everything had happened quickly. Colin and I meeting 18 months ago and moving in together last spring as we finalized the detail of the wedding. It was almost too good to be true, and I fought off shivers of doubt. How well can you really know another person? If things didn't work out, would Rachel be scarred for life? Would I? I glanced back at Colin's parents seated in the front row and radiating approval. Behind them were friends and colleagues along with families from Rachel's school, nods and smiles in every direction. The justice continued. If there's anyone who knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let him or her speak now. There was no sound except for a communal swish of air, heads turning, as everyone was satisfied there was no objection. Victoria, the justice was beaming in my direction. Would you like to read the vows you've written? I nodded and gripped Colin's hand as I recited the words I'd composed and memorized. You came into our lives after we'd been alone for so long. You made everything fun and helped me to believe in happy endings. Rachel was giggling, pleased that the service we'd rehearsed over the past few days was finally happening. I cupped her under the chin and shifted back to Colin. You treated my beautiful daughter as if she were your own child. There were sniffles and cooings from behind me. I love you. The room was still. Then an explosion of activity erupted as everyone was on their cell phones, gasping and hissing, metal chairs pushed backward by the jerking of bodies and shifting of feet. It was the unexpected screeching of the furniture that caused me to turn towards the crowd. Julie, my closest friend since grad school, caught my eye and waved frantically from the first row. Though technically a bridesmaid, we agreed she'd sit it out with her young daughter, a newborn, who'd been sleeping in a portable car seat atop one of the folding chairs. The seatbacks were joined by winding strands of leaves that had been woven especially for the occasion to symbolize the bonds of eternity. My body tensed. Usually the bride didn't have to compete with swooshes and pings. I was about to telegraph a withering glance, shush the audience. Whatever it was could wait. But Julie's look stopped me. In the seconds that followed, she placed her husband's hand on the baby carrier, and stood up, walking towards me. All I could think was that I finally understood what was meant by the phrase ashen complexion. Hal, her husband, was trying hard not to look my way. My aunt's best day comment ran through my mind as Julie stepped quickly. I shrugged at Colin and squeezed Rachel's hand, wondering what to do, but it wasn't up to me. There was another explosion of whispering, gasping, and shifting, along with a chorus of pinging. My panic rose. Something really bad had to be going on, like a terrorist attack or international crisis. "Excuse us," Julie said, as she began dragging me towards the private room at the side of the chambers. I couldn't help noticing how pretty the contrast was between her auburn hair and teal blue sheath. I hissed, "What on earth?" She shut the door, encasing us in a small paneled room that held only 2 winged chairs, upholstered in a faded red. There was no air, but I hardly noticed because there was so much going on at once. Colin began pounding on the door. Rachel was calling from the hallway, and Julie was shoving her iPhone at me. There was pity all over her face. "Look, I'm so sorry." Her voice was shaking. "What's going on?" Whatever made her drag me out of my own nuptials had to be bad. I wanted to feel the reassuring grip of my daughter's hand and steel myself against my fiancé's shoulders. "Let's get Colin and we'll figure it out together," I said, moving towards the locked door, but Julie grabbed my arm. "No." I heard his voice. "Vic, open the door." His tone was high-pitched, almost a whine. "Mom?" Rachel sounded upset. I tried to wrench myself away from Julie, but she pulled me back and pushed her phone at me. "You need to look at this." The video was grainy and poorly filmed. A beautiful, naked blonde woman was on all fours, grunting with pleasure. Her long yellow hair swayed as she moved back and forth, groaning. Her moan became insistent as she threw back her head. "Yes, baby, yes, yes." What did this X-rated display have to do with me? Tasteless though it was, I couldn't avert my eyes. Time slowed as Colin pounded on the door and Rachel begged me to let her in. My mind fought to make sense of why a blonde with exposed butt cheeks had interrupted my wedding. "More, baby, more." She turned to the camera, briefly lifting a brow and flicking her hair, then moved slightly back to reveal the arms of the man below. His back arched in pleasure as he groaned. "Smile for the camera, baby," she urged. "Huh?" The man's voice was sleepy, confused. He slowly propped himself up on one elbow, revealing first his jawline, then cheekbones, until finally the chocolatey brown eyes came into view. I fell back against one of the chairs as the small screen went dark. There was no mistaking what I'd seen. Stop there. A lot of reading. Thank you, Melissa. So I'm happy to, I'm glad you're all here. I'm happy to take if anyone has questions about, and I have to say that Karen was the amazing person who was able to help me get a book published during a pandemic, who was able to get a really good publisher to and after years of work, I feel very fortunate to be able to release a book. It is not easy. Gifted writers, much more talented than I, can't get agents, can't get books published. So I'm really grateful. That's Barbarians at the TTA. It begins.
Thank you so much, because you are a gifted writer and you deserve to be published, and we just have to get the word out more and sell some more books.
Thanks. It's about basically a wedding upended by cyberbullying and bullies. The speaker said, "Wow, I thought the worst bullies were the kids in the schoolyard, but now I know better," kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if anyone has any questions just about publishing or books or fiction or psychology. I'm more than happy to take. I don't know how much time we have. Melissa, you're the boss.
We have around 8 minutes left, so plenty of times for a quick Q&A. Definitely. Their book is available to purchase. It's in the flyer at the corner bookstore. There's a free delivery.
Oh,
for
thank you for saying that. I forgot. See, I'm terrible. I'm actually bad at sales, but that's right. The corner bookstore, and they will deliver it to your house for free, or wherever else you
That's
shop.
why I'm in membership and you're the doctor.
Okay.
But if anyone has a section, you could either unmute your microphone or write in the chat portion. And
As
then
far as the kids go, do you think that it's worth just doing like a 6 monthly or yearly check-in with a psychologist just to make sure that they're okay and they're dealing with this stuff okay? Or do you think it's enough for the parent to just keep talking to them and keep an open dialogue?
I can tell you a couple of things. That if a child is sleeping and eating, if they've got some friends, if they're doing well in school, it's generally a sign. Of course, you can't diagnose anyone without meeting them, and blanket statements, there's always exceptions. But again, sleeping and eating, some friends, the moods are sort of okay, they're getting good grades at school. Those are things that let you know your kid's okay. But that said, I'm the kind of person who believes that everybody could benefit from a little bit of psychotherapy, a little tune-up now and then.
Right.
So sure, why not? And there's so many good people. We're in New York. I mean, everything's at our fingertips. There's very, very good people who could evaluate how kids are doing. So why not? If there's any question, it's always worth it to get an expert opinion or to check in every few months, or why not?
I guess you're right. You have to go by what they're doing.
stigma, I feel like, has been entirely removed. And like 2020 more than ever has brought mental health to the forefront. Aside from COVID news, everyone's like, all right, as opposed to physical health, now mental health is a huge.
That's true.
Huge.
It's so accepted. Like if you tell all of like the kids' parents, like, oh, like my kid is seeing someone there, I'm sure everyone would be like, me too. So,
Yeah.
or at least
That's true. There's no stigma. That's true.
because there's been an upheaval. So
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. Sorry we couldn't hear your voice, but thank you for joining. It's so good to see you. A little Harmony announcement. We have some big things happening. So we have our outdoor dining and our athletics are plotted to open next week. So the gym, squash, and indoor dining on a reservation basis. And also there is to-go options as well. So if you don't feel comfortable sitting outside, we do have the kitchen up and running. So you can take it in a cute little Harmony to-go package and have a taste of Harmony in your home.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Stephanie. I look forward to reading your book.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was so nice to talk to everyone. Thank you all for coming and making time for this, really.
Of course. No, it was great.